So once you've loaded your program onto a USB stick, you're going to find the main CPU for the DL-NCD. It's located in the main electrical panel and usually mounted in the top left corner. As you can see, our main CPU is here. Insert your USB into the USB slot. Now that you've inserted your USB, we're going to go and find the file that we've loaded, the NC file that we've loaded onto the USB. So from your DL-NCD operating screen, we're going to get to our C drive ultimately, and to do that you have a nice shortcut if you use the Windows and the D button. That'll get you to the desktop. So on the desktop here, we're going to go to our Start menu and navigate to your computer. And on my USB, you'll look at the USB D drive here and find where you've stored your NC, your cutout file. I've stored mine under my machines folder for the DL-NCD in the template files, and this is my file here, TPR2551W. If it's a text file, it will not run, so you want to make sure it's saved as a .NC extension. So mine is saved here as a .NC extension, so I'm going to right-click and copy. And now I'm going to copy this file over to the C drive on this computer so that from our DL-NCD software we can access the file from my that we've saved onto our computer. So we go into the C drive. You're going to look for the Kval folder. In the Kval folder, you're going to open the CNC folder, the cutouts folder, and you're going to save the file in the cutouts folder. I'm going to right-click and paste. And there's our file right there, TPR2551W. So it's now saved in the C drive in the proper folder, which means it should be accessible by our DL-NCD software. To check this, we'll go ahead and close out of this window. We'll be back in our DL-NCD software. And what you can do is click Refresh File List, which will refresh the whole folder that these cutouts are saved in. And there you see it pop up right here, TPR2551W. So now this cutout is ready to be utilized. Next, you want to input the proper door parameters. And to do this, you need to make sure not only that your door that you're running is the correct width and length and thickness, but you want to make sure that the parameters that this cutout has been made for are correct as well, and that they match the door that we're cutting. So first, we're going to go back and check those parameters which should be provided to you as to the length, the width and length of the door, as well as the cutout size. So I have this saved as a PDF back in my on my USB. So I'm going to navigate back to my USB, which I think should just be open here, and I'm going to find my PDF file that will have the dimensions for this cutout on it. So the cutout that I am working with here is the TPR2551W. So there are a few different dimensions that are important here when running this cutout. You have your width and length of the door, the specified door that this template will be used for, which are A is length and B is width, and those parameters can be found at the bottom here. You have A and B, 79.25 for A, 35.938 for B. And then also you want to check, there's a couple other dimensions that are important. You have your top-down dimension, which is the dimension from the top of the door to the top of the cutout after the door has been cut. 4.717, you want to keep that in mind. We'll come back to that later. As well as our D width, which is one side of the cutout, from the inside of the cutout to the outside of the door, and we'll come back to that later when we measure the door. But for now, the important parameters for inputting this cutout into our DL-NCD software are the length and width of the door. So now we're going to go and make sure that we have our door that is the correct length and width, and then we'll insert those parameters into the DL-NCD software. So we've checked our door, and our door is the correct length and width. So for door width, we're in our 35.938, and our length is 79.25. Our door thickness is 1.75, so that'll just remain. And door material, this is a steel door, so we're going to select from wood fiberglass door to steel door. Okay, so now our door parameters have been entered. You want to make sure that your template has been selected. And if you're ready to feed the door in and cut, you're going to select auto feed mode. From disabled, you're going to enable auto feed mode, which will then feed the door in. And the last step is to press the start sequence button, and we'll be ready to run. Okay, so once your door has been cut, you want to check the dimensions to make sure that they're correct. First dimension we're going to check is the top down. And the top down is measured from the top of the door to the top of the cutout. And looking back on the PDF file that gives me my dimensions, this top down dimension should just be about a 32nd under 4 3/4 of an inch, 4 3/4 inches. So I measure here, and it's just about there. That is good. The next dimensions you want to measure are the width between the cutout and the side of the door on both sides. And since this is a centered rectangle, these measurements should be the same. So we'll first measure one side. You can also look at the PDF. The PDF provided here gives me 4, about the same as the top down 4, and about a 32nd under 4 3/4. So we'll measure both sides to make sure that 4 3/4 is on. Just under is perfect. And then we'll measure this side. Make sure you get a good eye on it. Yeah, 4 3/4. So that is centered. And what I like to do as well is measure the door width again, just to make sure that our door width is correct along where we're measuring, because that could give us false readings. Perfect. Okay, so this rectangle is good, and you know that your file is good. So if you get in an event where your rectangle seems to be off, say your widths are not equal or they're not measuring correctly, the first thing you should do is go back and check your program that you've created. It's easy to miss a decimal place or get a number incorrect, so that should be your first step. Check to make sure those measurements are entered correctly. If you get to you check your program and those are all entered correctly, go back to the parameters that you've entered on the DL-NCD software and make sure that all those are entered correctly. If you enter a door width that may be off or that you've entered off, your cut's not going to be centered because it's trying to cut to a width of the door that's not matching up with the width that you've entered. If you've checked both of those and those seem to be on, the third step is to go back and make sure that the calibration of the machine is correct.